so great to see you all. So just until recently, I was the collection development librarian here at the library. But I learned about seed libraries back in 2014. In 2014, I worked at Bennington College. I was in the business office, not in the library. And I learned that they had a seed library at the Crossett Library. I don't know if any of you know that. And I'd never heard of that before. I thought that was so cool. And they also have a working farm on campus called the Purple Carrot Farm. So it was a really nice, having trouble hearing me?
I can't understand.
Okay, I'm just trying to be really cautious because I had an exposure recently, but I'm negative. I tested negative today, so we have to say these things now. Okay, can everyone hear me? Yeah. Okay, great. So anyway, Purple Carrot Farm, Crossett Seed Library, that's where I learned about seed libraries. First, flash forward to me being in my master's degree program for library and information science, and I was studying collection development very thoroughly and learned more about seed libraries. And they've been a thing for a very long time. I just didn't know about them until 2014. So here I am, my first day, which was a year ago yesterday, May 17th, 2021. It was my first day at the library, and I was meeting with one of my new colleagues. And behind her was this beautiful vintage card catalog. And as soon as I saw it, I said, we need to have a seed library, and that's where it's going to be housed. And she said, yeah! So now here we are, literally a year later. The card catalog is out there. It's ready for the seeds to be organized in it. And what was inspiring to me about it, I'm not a gardener. I don't know about seeds. That's where our friends here come in. But what I thought was great about it is that it does inspire community in a place like Vermont, which is rural, which has a rich history of agriculture and gardening. And it tells you something about the history of this place, and when you learn about indigenous plants from this area and how important it is to save those things and learn about them. And the whole demystifying seeds thing, as I'm preparing for this and organizing everything, I'm learning so much, and there's so much more to learn. It can feel really overwhelming, we had talked about, and that's where the demystification comes in, and that's where our experts are going to step in. But it's a very simple process. Once the seed library is up and running, it's just like, I don't know if anybody remembers using the old card catalogs back in the day. It's the same thing. The seed packets fit so nicely into the card catalog. They'll all be organized alphabetically. We'll have vegetables, flowers, and fruits. And there's a self-checkout. So you don't have to go up to the help desk and go beep with each seed that you take from the library. There's a little binder. It's a floral binder. It's out in the main lobby area, and I invite you all to come out there after the event, and I can show you and talk to you a little bit more about it. But you will just write in your name, the date, and the seeds that you're taking, and we'll probably start with up to 5 packets per person and see how that goes. We can always change things. And then there's the seed sharing part. So that's when you're going to check seeds out from the library. We also want you to bring your own seeds in that you've been cultivating and harvesting at home. And some of you already know how to do that, and maybe some of you don't, like myself, and we'll learn. And that's just going to keep the local varieties coming and going, and it'll be really great. So I'd love to talk to you more about it after the event, and I can show off the card catalog, which is so cool. It's so pretty. And without further ado, I'd like to introduce Maria Reade.
Hi, how's everybody doing? Thanks for coming out tonight. I am going to sort of act as the MC of this because I know the least of anybody over here of these three, so I was like, I'll do the MC role, which is good. The MC role. All right, so I'm Maria Reade. I write for Renewal, Vermont Magazine. I work with Scout at Someday Farm. I work with Anne and Kate through Grateful Hearts, and I work with Nora through this BVA collaboration we're doing. So I can't get enough time with these guys. It's great, these women, it's awesome. So our first speaker, may I call forward Scout Proft of Someday Farm. Come on up. Okay, there you have it. So, Scout.
Oh, can I just say something? We got 4 tons of seed delivered to the farm today.
Oh my gosh, that's a lot of plants.
That's what we're going to say. Okay, so go on.
Okay.
Just let them think about that.
It's a little teaser.
4 tons.
4 tons.
Tell us more.
So,
Tons.
hybrid, open pollinated, F1, heirloom, landrace, organic, GMO, non-GMO. What do any of these terms mean? Honest to God, I flip through seed catalogs and like, I just want to buy seeds. What do these terms mean? So could you please demystify some of these?
Well, let's start with hybrids, because that's almost like the new bad guy on the block. So a hybrid is two varieties of a plant that is similar, like a tomato and a tomato, and they are put together and cross-pollinated. So we've got a tomato that's a plum tomato here, and we've got a tomato that's a salad tomato here, and somebody wants a plum tomato that tastes like a salad tomato, so they cross them. That's what a hybrid is. And you get hybrid vigor, F1 generation, the first generation is F1, so you get hybrid vigor. So that first crossing of those two same tomato plants is very strong. And you've got a great plant. Like maybe some of you guys know Jetstar or Celebrity tomatoes. Those are all hybrids. So the parents have different characteristics, and someone thought, I want this variety, I want this characteristic, and this characteristics, I want to put them together. That's a hybrid. When it first happens, you've got great vigor, but if you were to save those seeds from the hybrid, you will not get the parent, or either of the parents, or that F1 generation, the first generation. You'll get a mix of all different things. So saving the seed from a hybrid doesn't make sense unless you save it out 8 or 10 generations, and then you might get what you wanted back again to the F1 generation. You lose vigor every generation though. So the hybrid vigor happens on the first phase. And the problem with hybrids too is that it's owned by a company. Monsanto.
It's like they own the patent.
They own the patent to that seed because they've got the parents, and they're not telling you how they're doing it, how they're pollinating, how much they're pollinating. So when you're buying a hybrid, you're actually buying a company.
All right. So nothing wrong. You can still buy. You're buying plants and have a wonderful plant, but you can't save the seed and try to plant it the next year.
Exactly.
Okay.
Exactly. And the opposite of that would be a heirloom. Thank you. You didn't raise your hand. It's an heirloom. So those are the exact same parents, or they could be different, but usually it's the exact same parents, and they're pollinated, and you're getting the exact same as the parent. So you're pollinating, you're isolating. So we've got a tomato that we're working with Middlebury College, and it's a pink tomato. I have to isolate it. We isolate it in our greenhouse, so no other tomatoes are near it. We know the parent because the parent is this one tomato, this heirloom tomato, and I'm going to save the seed from that one tomato, and I've been saving it for, gosh, it's probably been about 15 years now. And I know that that tomato every year is gonna, when I take the seeds out, is gonna come true to that parent. So that's what an heirloom is.
You save the seed for 6 years, or you save seeds for 6 years?
You could save the seeds forever.
I mean,
They're only viable, unfortunately, you can get into the whole thing with tomatoes, seeds are only viable for 6 years. So you have to replant those tomatoes. I can't go on vacation for 6 years.
So she means every year save it. For 6 years, you save it each year.
Yeah, you have to save. That's the problem with the seed library, is with these heirlooms, you're dealing with a live embryo. You've got to replant these seeds or they're gonna die. That's what an heirloom, we have to have, it's a contract. that we have to do. So an heirloom is that the seed is an embryo and it has the potential to grow. And if it's an heirloom, we have to replant to keep that heirloom pure. And in doing so, we have to isolate it too. And there's books, and I have a book called Seed to Seed back there, which is a wonderful book. And it tells you how far apart you have to put your tomatoes so that they stay pure as an heirloom, or your beans, how far apart you can put one variety to another so that they stay pure, or your corn, how far apart you can put it so that one corn variety that you really like stays pure. So and heirlooms are wonderful because the hybrid, who owns hybrids? Companies. Yeah. But who owns heirlooms? Everybody. That's the wonderful thing. Nobody owns an heirloom. Now we do have a program that Nora's going to talk about that is it's a little offshoot to sharing. But it's an interesting concept.
Okay, 2 more terms. Open pollinated.
And let me just tell you that heirlooms, there's the most amount of diversity in varieties in heirlooms versus hybrids. Because hybrids, the companies don't want to put out a lot of hybrids because it costs them money. And heirlooms, there's 164 different kinds of tomatoes. They're just spreading them. We want to spread the wealth. The more diversity, the more likely we are to be able to have a food secure system, because what one variety does well this year, this other variety over here does better next year. That's why heirlooms are so important to have, because there's so much diversity in those varieties.
Excellent.
Next question.
Open pollinated, quick thumbnail.
Open pollinated are just any plant that has the ability to spread their genetics. So all heirlooms are open pollinated plants. It just means by nature, though. Open pollinated means that they're pollinated by nature.
Pollinated by nature, okay.
Open pollinated.
Landrace.
Can I use your notes?
Too small.
Yeah, you'll never read that.
Landrace is an interesting concept. You think about it in terms of animals. I've got a perplexed look there. You're like, what the heck is that?
Never heard that term.
Never heard the term. It's usually used for animals, but it's also for plants. And that's what I want to have happen in Manchester. I want to have varieties that are so specific to Manchester that we know do really well here, and that are centric, that we're like gill feather turnip. It's a turnip that was founded in Vermont. It only grows in Vermont. Well, now it's spread further, but it was developed in Vermont. It was isolated in Vermont. It's unto itself, so it becomes its own entity.
Yeah.
And it hasn't been cross-pollinated with anyone else. It hasn't been open-pollinated. It's been very coveted. And that's a landrace variety.
A landrace heirloom.
And landrace heirloom.
Can I tell one quick story about that? I met the guy who was involved with the gill feather seed, and his job was to get the seed out to people. I met him down in Dummerston a few years ago. And he was on a mission, like, I want to get this seed in every state, every state in the country. So in his car, he always had packets of these seed, and sometimes he'd be like walking down wherever, it's like South Dakota. He'd see a car with a plate, South Dakota, and just like wait until that person came home. He's like, hi, take this and go home and plant it. The guy's like, okay.
But see, it doesn't necessarily work in South Dakota.
But he's like, you got it.
That's interesting, because that's what I see, that anyone who moves to Manchester, let's give them a welcome basket, but let's give them seeds that are really specific to this area. Wouldn't that be rocking?
Who are your seed mentors?
Oh my gosh. So I've got a few seed mentors here. This is an interesting, one of my kids worked for this fellow, John Jennings. He's like the Robert Rodell of the West Coast. And he specifically chose, so I learned a lot about him through my daughter, and he specifically chose varieties and turned them into heirlooms because he was trying to find seeds that were not high yielding, not that looked pretty, not that stored well or transported well, that had highest nutritional content. And people would come from all over the world to take workshops with him. And not to just grow any old zucchini, but to grow the zucchini that has the most heavily nutritional content in it. And that was his mission in life, and now he's 75 years old. So, this is just from North Shore Bookstore. John Jennings, amazing guy. So he's choosing seed varieties, not for the reasons that probably most of us do, but specifically for nutrition. And I also have another friend, Renee Shepherd, who's out in California, and she's now in her 70s as well. She just sold her seed company. And she chooses Renee Seed, she chooses all of her varieties, not for nutritional content, not for beauty, but specifically for taste. So every variety that she chooses, well, not the edible, not the flowers, of course, but she chooses all of her varieties. She's the first woman seed company in the United States. She chooses only for taste. So I went out, I had the great fortune to go out and visit with her and hang out with her for 3 days, and seeing her in her 24 raised beds, and she'd take a carrot and go, and she'd throw it, and I was like, whoa! And then she took out a beet out of it, so and eats the raw beet, and then she would put it in a Ziploc bag and write something on it. So she was just doing these enormous beds, 24 beds the length of this room. And she was just looking for all those varieties from around the world that she would then buy from companies or local seed people. She didn't care so much whether they were hybrids or heirlooms, but she wanted the best tasting seed.
And her company is called Renee's Seeds.
Renee's
They're
Seeds.
really pretty cute big
She's
packages.
still doing it?
She's still doing it. Yeah.
Yep. And then one of them,
And
Jay?
and Jay Lashinsky is a seedsman up in Middlebury, Vermont, and he and I have been working on this tomato variety that does very well, tastes wonderful, but it cracks. So it doesn't look so good when you take it to farmer's market, but the taste is divine, and you always get a crop. But there's a seed woman up in Danby, Vermont, who grows a plum tomato called Blue Beach Plum. It's an heirloom. She's been growing it as a land race, so very isolated, and I've tried to grow it and I've had horrible success. I don't know if you could say horrible and success in the same word, but the plants are so spindly and there's so little fruit. So I call her up and I said, Annette, what's up with this Blue Beach that's in the Fedco seed catalog? You say it's the best tasting tomato, yeah, but I only get 3 on the spindly little plants. She said, oh, I forgot to put it in the seed catalog. It really grows really well on high marbled soils.
And Stanley.
It's Danby. Oh. So you've got to really know when you're putting your seed in for the seed catalog, write as much information on how that seed and where that seed is grown. Because some seeds do really well in drought, some do well in sweet soils, some do better when there's lots of rain, some do better when it's all different conditions, when it's windy.
Take a lot of notes.
Like this one, this is early riser corn. This is by Jack Laser Butterwork Farm, and he grew this out for 30 some odd years, and it's for cornmeal, it's for people as well as animals, and he grew this out for 30 years, and he grew it early riser, because it's fairly short, and it has got a thick stalk because it's way up near the Canadian border, and it matures very early. It's a Vermont variety. I wouldn't say it's land race, but it's a Vermont variety.
And he was really dedicated to getting that out. Again, not keeping the seed for himself, so that's how he gave it to a friend who gave it to you, and so he's like, grow it. I want to see if you guys can grow it down there. So he has pockets of trusted growers who are keeping it alive.
And the problem is that now we've made a promise. So now, Friday or Saturday, Maria and I have to plant this seed. It's hard. It's hard to make that promise.
Is there any other one? I'll give it just a minute more. Any more Vermont-based cool seed saving stories? Beyond early riser, the good one.
This is a popcorn. We grow a lot of popcorn because kids love it. We love to work with Hildine, with Ann's kids and Nora's kids, who are BBA kids. And we like to break up the popcorn and talk about seed saving. And we've developed this popcorn that is a lot like what Jack has told us. It's a shorter variety. We've done it for about, gosh, 20-something years. It's my son Anders's variety. He said, thought he'd make $1 million off this popcorn.
Is it different colors?
Yeah, it's different colors. It's white on the outside, but different colors on the inside. And he specifically chose the varieties that were easy for him to harvest. He's a 3 to 5 year old boy. He doesn't want corn way up here. He wants corn way down here.
Yeah.
Ease of picking. That's why he kept choosing his ears because of the ease of use, ease of picking.
And you planted that with Manchester, the Memphis kids a couple of years ago too.
Yeah, we planted it at the community garden as well. And it's a great kid.
It's only for hand picking.
It's great for
Yeah.
hand picking.
Yeah.
So we've been growing that for, well, 23 years, as long as Anders, Ann is a friend of Anders, so.
All right, that's good. I know you can talk for 4 hours on this, and that's just getting going. But I think, so afterwards, by the way, I'm going to have Ann up next and then Nora, and then at the end, we can have open questions for everybody. So everybody gets a chance to share their stories. That sound good? Okay. Thank you, Scout. Ann Hausslein, coming to the fore. All right. Ann is the farm and garden educator at Hildene, the farm at the Dean at the Hildene down in the flats, but she's an amazing farm garden educator and just an amazing resource for everybody in the community.
Remember the Scouts?
What's that?
The Scouts.
Oh, this was Scout. When you were with the seeds, it was this Scout I was talking about.
Yeah.
Yes.
All right, so Ann, tell me, you are in your role, how do you incorporate seed saving and sharing in your role as a farm and garden educator at the Dean Farm?
Okay, so to begin, I'm actually going to walk around and I'm going to give everybody this is sort of how I often do it. These are scarlet runner beans. I call these magic beans. You've probably all grown them. I remember the first time that I grew them, they dried, you look at them and you go, oh my goodness. Yeah. So so that is sort of how I begin in my job. I work with Burn, which is all the high school kids. We have elementary school groups that come through. We have summer camps. We have people that, anytime anyone wants to come and visit, the gardens are there. And so what I like to do when I'm talking about seeds is just letting, here, I'll have a little worry. I think I got everybody. So anyway, I like to feel like with seeds, you can hold it, it's beautiful, it's magic. You know, just that whole idea that there's life inside there, everything that plant needs to grow that Scout just described so well is incorporated in there. So in my role at Hildene, from all those different ages that I talked about, depending on what they're there for, we will expand upon the seed saving and seed sharing. So it is a really big topic, as you know, but with beans, it is often, it's a little bit more simple because they are self-pollinated. It's easier to isolate them. It's easier to keep them true to type. I like these scarlet runners because they are pole beans and they are wonderful for pollinators. They're red, hummingbirds love them. And they do well in all the gardens. So my role there is to sort of provide a atmosphere that, this is me personally, that people can understand where seeds come from and to get them interested in plants.
And you do that through the school groups that come visit as well as your summer camps?
Yep, and summer camps, the high school kids, and then at Hildene, I also left some back there. We do a lot with pollinator plants, and we save the seeds and keep growing them out, but also grow out the plants and sell those or pass them along to the public.
And you have beautiful pollinator gardens down there. That's a really big part of your mission.
Yes. So pollinator sanctuary, and yes.
So you also work with Nora with the Seed Saving Club.
Yes.
BBA and Hildine. So tell me a little bit about that.
Yeah, so this year, thanks to some interested students, they decided to have a seed saving club so they, when they can, come down every Friday. And we basically, it's follow the interest of the students that are in the class. But we do everything from going out in the garden and gathering seeds, just like bees bringing them in. If we're gathering seeds that need to be, say we got a bunch of amaranth from one of the gardens, just the whole process of cleaning them and winnowing them and then packaging them. Also, we'll often go around and wander the edges of the wetlands and look for different kinds of seeds. And then like when you mentioned it, that made me think of like, say with the summer camp, and I'd pass that along to Paige, we would always make seed bombs where you gather up all sorts of different kinds of pollinator seeds, roll them up in soil and clay, and then you can toss them in areas that you want
You guys got that?
plants to grow.
That's
It's really
pretty
fun.
cool.
Kids love that. Yeah.
That's
And
gonna
once
be
you
one
tell
of our
them that, they'll
activities.
start walking along gathering seeds on walks and stuff in their pockets full. So my aim, I always want, is when, you know, at the end of the season in the garden, it's fun to have some seeds there that people can come through and bring some home with them.
Do you have any, some, you know, I'm sure a lot of people are curious, like how do I even begin to save seed? Which is also why we decided to do this program today, because you can't start thinking about it at the end of the summer. So if people are interested in trying a little seed saving on their own,
Someone in here said it very well, and I apologize, I don't remember which one of you, but what it all does begin with, and I think it might have been Mary, it does begin with knowing what grows well in your area. And that's not a simple, for a lot of people that's not simple, but if you've been growing for a while, that's like the Scout's talking about that, what grows well for exactly where you are. And so that, the dream that Scout has of having different seeds from Manchester, but there is a difference between Danby and the Dean and, you know, the community garden. There are different soils, there's different little pockets. So first is knowing what grows well, because for a seed, for a plant to be able to go to seed, it needs to be able to fully mature and then be able to live long enough to be able to produce its seeds. We didn't get into the whole discussion too, like with the gill feather turnip, that is not an annual, that is a biennial, so it has to go through the winter and the next year it produces its seeds. So I personally, this is all fun things to learn about, and there are great books that Scouts put out. I also have a couple easy charts back there that are fun to look at from Seed Savers Exchange out in Decorah, Iowa. So they will list out all the crops and tell you all about that crop, how far apart they need to be, all those kind of interesting. But back to the biennial discussion, in some ways that sounds difficult, but on a lot of levels it's easy. If you have a carrot that goes through the winter, then it's isolated. It's not like you have all these other different at that same time. Carrot's actually a hard one with wild carrots, but if you have your gill feather turnip that makes it through the winter, when it's going to seed, you don't have a lot of other things in the garden that are also going to cross with it.
So one resource is the Seed Savers Exchange. You said they're a good resource.
Yeah,
Okay, it would be the catalog or website. So you spent this year, like this growing season, I really like this plant, I like this flavor, I like the way it tastes and grows, and this is what I think I really want to save.
Yeah.
So then, what do? How do you save the seed?
Oh, well, it's different for all different vegetables, the process. Some are simpler than other. Beans are very easy. You just, you know, that's why they're fun too, and that's why they're a good introduction. Yeah, they'll dry on the vine. I also have some fun ones back there that I grow in the greenhouse down there, like loofah gourds. I should have carried that up. That's full of, and if anyone wants any loofah seeds, those are harder to get to maturity. I'm not going to encourage everybody here, because if you don't have a warm spot for it, it's not going to get old enough to produce its seeds in its first year. It might be...
No, I think it's way...
Through the door, right?
Yes, I smashed it in the door, and then I was there all over the carpet too.
Is it that big one over
Maria's
on
last
my
question
table there, the
was
master
about-
garden table? What are they looking for?
How do you say seeds?
Yes.
Oh
that's
yeah,
what
how
I-
do you say
You
thank
don't
you?
need a lot of quantity in order to save this.
No, yes. So, and another quick fun thing for everyone to think garden, I started saving seeds, and quite honestly, I started noticing in the different places I'd had gardens, there were certain plants that I loved that would self-seed themselves. And I came to realize, like, oh, this garden, this space, you know, the amaranth does really well. And another was like, oh my gosh, all my parsnips are making it through the winter and self-sowing here, or, you know, whatever. And some, you know, often it's flowers like sunflowers that do really well. So I kind of noticed that. And then after that, you can then start experiment a little bit more. So it's just like anything with gardening. It's really, I always say, it's, if a plant is already, if it's happy there and doing well, it will be easier for you to cultivate it in a way that it will produce seeds for you. But we don't have that much time, but seriously, it's pretty basic when you think about the seeds, but generally, but it is a little different between a tomato and a pepper and a corn. You know, there are different ways to save them. You always do want to let them mature. You're not going to get them before they're fully mature, then they won't be viable inside and be able to then pass on their life to the next generation. Can I get more specific?
No, I have a...
And then just understanding which seeds, you know, like a beet's going to be a biennial, a carrot's going to be a biennial, kale, it's not going to be in your first year. You're going to have to be able to get them through the winter. And then the next year they will produce seeds.
Well, I can picture the seed in a cucumber or in a
That's it.
eggplant or an apple.
Yep.
Where's the seed in a carrot?
Fun. Yes, exactly. That's the other fun thing about talking. It's how your garden grows. So that is the root, and it's fun when you're working with kids. You talk about what part of the vegetable do you eat? You know, it's with a carrot you're eating the root. But the reason for the root is just holding up that carrot plant. It creates flowers, and then they go to seed.
So
And then you
I never
collect
really
those
see
seeds.
flowers.
Because we harvest them.
And you know what's really fun though? Queen Anne's lace is a wild carrot. That's where carrots came from. So when you see Queen Anne's lace growing along the road, that's a wild carrot.
So like a kale seed is going to be a teeny little thing, right?
And they look a little like a mustard seed. And this is fun too. It helps you when you collect seeds and look at them. You hear of plant families. A lot of those, the seeds are, you know, chard and beet seeds look alike. Yeah, that's an interesting way for you to help understand plants better too, by looking at their seeds.
I had a friend of mine who she was I think she was doing the Peace Corps in Africa a long, long time ago, and she was living within this village with a family, and then at the end of this, one of the ends of the seasons, the head of the community, he had this beautiful tomato sitting there on his the table, whatever. She said, "That's a beautiful tomato." And he says, "Yes, look at this tomato, and hold it, touch it, smell it. She said, "It's beautiful." Then he takes it, bang, throws it against the wall of this mud hut, and he says, "That's why I saved it. Those will be the seeds we're going to use the next year." And she's like, "You right?" He said, "I didn't reckon. I've just preserved it." You know, it's just, she just fed this.
And they stick on the wall, that's great. So tomato seeds are interesting. A lot of people, when they save tomato seeds too, will let them ferment a little bit, because that'll start, scraping down the walls of the seed in the right way so they're able to last long enough. So it's interesting. All seeds protect themselves in different ways. Every single plant has its own story to it, and when you begin to save seeds, you learn so much more about them.
And there's research, and obviously the internet has wonderful source information.
Yeah, and the library.
And the library. By the way, Megan has a beautiful selection of gardening books too, gardening and growing books.
And this is the Loofah. You can hear them in there. If anyone would like any, see how they're, isn't that fun?
Wow.
So you think about this, they grow like this, they hang down, and then when they are, and I took the little bottom off, but when they are fully ready, mature enough, the little, looks like a nipple that's on the bottom almost drops off, and then look what drops out. The seeds drop out. So it's its own seed making machine.
And then it becomes the Loofah sponge when you remove this.
Yeah, when you scrape this off is the sponge that we're using.
There's a cleaned off one back there on the display table.
It's also an instrument.
Yeah.
Yeah. Rock on the trail. So thank you very much, Anne. Thank you all very much.
I'm supposed to get in and get my props. Everyone else will get your props.
Props to the Nora. While Nora is making her way up here, so Nora, she's just completing her first year teaching at BBA, and she is a graduate of Bowdoin College and a, what'd you say, biology major there?
Biology and environmental studies.
And then she got her master's degree in education from University of Pennsylvania in ethnobotany, right? No? Oh, math education. Yeah. So at BBA, she teaches a bunch of classes: farm and food systems, sustainable ag, ethnobotany, and ecology and evolutionary biology. So a lot of syllables in So Nora, thank you for coming. And Nora has some special information about the Abenaki or Abenaki Landling program. And if she has a moment after that, we might have asked her to speak about the Seeds of Renewal project. But first, tell us about the Abenaki Landling program, please.
Yeah, so this is a collaboration between the Nulhegan Band of the Cohassuck Abenaki, which is a sovereign nation in northern Vermont, and NOFA. So they've sort of partnered together.
NOFA is the Northeast Organic Farming Association.
Yeah, thank you. And so they have partnered to essentially use growers throughout the state and the region to help restore sort of Abenaki indigenous crop varieties to produce food for the sovereign nation, and to help educate people about indigenous cultivation, seed saving, etc. So what I will be doing with my students is growing 3 Abenaki crops. We're growing callus flint corn, which is this sort of round corn that people can take a closer look at after. We're growing skunk beans, which are another beautiful bean that's sort of black and white, very dramatic. And I know you maybe can't see all the way from there. And then Algonquin squash, which looks like a squash seed. And so we are both producing food by growing out these seeds that we will then return to the Nulhegan Band in northern Vermont to help feed people. And we're also going to save and rematriate seeds. So the seeds will be returned to the nation sort of as the growing cycle ends.
So this is a huge sign of trust that they're reaching beyond their tribes to share, to have other people grow their seeds out. So
Yeah.
it's a real commitment both ways.
Yeah, and I think a lot of us here are excited about sharing seeds. We always want to send people home with seeds in their pockets. I can't share seeds with you tonight because I have taken on the responsibility of preserving the sovereignty of the Nulhegan Band of the Cohassuck Abenaki Nation. I am preserving their sovereignty over these seeds. And one of the opportunities this creates for me as an educator is to talk to students about seed sovereignty, food sovereignty, what it means to have control over the seeds that your community has developed and protected from colonization for hundreds of years, and the ways that seeds hold power. Not just the power to make plants, but the power to hold, religious and ethnic identity, the power to preserve the food security of the community. And so it is a big responsibility. It's one I take very seriously and that I'm working on helping my students to understand. And I think in the same ways that we want to make sure that the people have the power to produce food rather than corporations, right? We also sometimes need to respect and give space to the power of other people to hold on to seeds that are important to them rather than distributing them freely.
So the 3 things you just mentioned, callus flint, skunk beans, and the Algonquin squash, we will never see these grown out at farmers markets.
Yeah,
They tend to keep them for themselves, is that correct?
Yes, actually you can buy callus flint corn, like High Mowing sells it. But growers who are participating in the Abenaki Land Link project are not selling it. You can, like my class will cook some food with it and eat it in the fall, but we're not gonna like sell food from it or seeds from it. Yeah, so the idea is that the Nulhegan Band has both sort of the cultural and the genetic control over the seeds, but also they're the ones who have the economic opportunity that the seeds create. So they do grind the Hausslein corn and they sell cornmeal from it. So that's one of the ways that it helps create economic opportunity for tribal members.
You want to keep going? You want me to talk about seeds of renewal?
I mean, I think, you know, one of the things I want us to walk away with is like enthusiasm about seeds, and as we say, demystifying. Like, I don't want people to feel intimidated, but I also want to just impress upon us the sense of responsibility and care and power that it really holds to save and share seeds, and that idea that by participating in seed saving and seed sharing, we're all participating in trying to create community resilience, right? The opportunity to have things that grow well here and a diversity of crops that'll last through climate change and things like that. And also that, you know, I think as people who care about seeds, we have a responsibility to consider reconciliation for the ways that growing food on land, teaching on land, learning on land benefits from the violent removal and ongoing displacement of Indigenous people. So always remembering that that's part of the story of the land, and it has to be part of the story of the seeds.
Sobering. Yep. So Seeds of Renewal Project, I believe that's started with a man named Dr. Fred Weissman, who is he is Nulhegan? Right, but he is up in Swanton, Vermont, in the northwest corner, and he has done incredible work on this program, Seeds of Renewal. He's written an amazing book that's so amazing that it's really hard to find. It's The Seven Sisters, and he has done extension. I mean, this has been his life research into the indigenous crops and that are grown here throughout New England. So if you can ever track down this book, Dr. Fred Weissman, looks like Wise Man, Fred Weissman, and it's The Seven Sisters. That's basically the basic title. It's great. So we want to share some thoughts on what this Seeds of Renewal project actually is.
Sure, so this is a project that's sort of related to the Abenaki Land Link project, and it was this really deep project trying to renew not only sort of crop varieties and like the genetics of indigenous crops, but also a lot of the cultural context for those crops. So that includes like ceremonies, agricultural ceremonies, foodways, recipes, things like that. And specific to, I think this was part of the process of getting federal recognition for the indigenous nations in Vermont. So part of that process was trying to sort of unearth a lot of information that's been lost and destroyed about how people have farmed here sort of before European colonization. And so it's this really important complement to the seeds and the fruits and vegetables themselves, which is sort of how they were grown. So we can grow them the way we grow any other bean, but there are ways of cultivating these crops that are specific to sort of indigenous agricultural practices, and then some of that ceremony as well. So really trying to wrap around the actual crop with the context and community. You know, it's opportunities to educate the community through inviting people in to ceremonies and foodways and recipes and things like that.
Again, which is this fairly new approach, which is wonderful. So opening themselves up. Thank you very much, Nora.
Thanks.
Thank you. You guys want to come on up? Now we have time for open questions. Let us come on up and take any questions.
I have a quick question.
Yes.
How did you get involved with this group?
I sent them a lot of emails. So there is somebody at NOFA who sort of runs point on this project. And so I reached out directly a while back, but then was also somebody who had been participating in this project, who I crossed paths with, sort of helped connect me to the person at NOFA, but yeah, there's someone at NOFA who coordinates it, and I did let her know that we would be doing this tonight, and she said, you know, I can give people her email if they're interested in participating. They sort of have everything set for this year, but for future years, they'd be happy to welcome new growers. And it's a big variety. Like we have, you know, our school garden that we're using. There are just home growers who grow a few seeds. So the scale varies pretty greatly in terms of who grows for them. And I would be happy to, if you're interested, I'd be happy to give you her email.
And I would add to that, to be persistent.
Yeah.
You had to be persistent. Yeah. I was persistent, I thought, for a while, and then Nora came, and I said, great, you take on the persistence. But it does come through, and I heard that through several other people.
Yep.
You know, it's an interesting concept we haven't even talked about too, is that all these seeds we're labeling are organically grown. And that's a really important point, and a lot of those seed catalogs back there are specific to organic seeds. And preserving organic seeds are more resilient seeds. So they're the seeds that if you at all can, to purchase them as Maria and I do for Sunday Farm, try to purchase organic seeds, because those are seeds that have gone through up and downs, trials and tribulations in their growing, versus a chemical conventional seed that is given just the right amount of chemical, just the right amount of water, just the right amount of pesticide. So it's an easier seed to get a crop from, but it's not as resilient. So I would just make a note that all these seeds we're talking about are organically grown seeds. And those are seeds that are best to be preserved if at all possible.
Yes.
The Hilding talk mentioned fermenting tomato seeds. How was that done?
You could just put them in, you could even just say, put your tomato in a jar and just let it.
With nothing in
It's so liquid, juicy that it'll start. And that's the wonderful thing about, when you think about plants, they are designed to carry on their seed line. I mean, isn't there the wonderful, I'm not even sure if it's true, but they say that about avocados, that they get eaten by like jaguars or something. And they have to go through get pooped up through an animal in order to be viable or something. So then it gets, traveled, and it has nutrients. They're all different ways, or just when you think about how different seeds travel, and that has a lot to do with saving them. Whether, like corn, is wind pollinated, so that does make it difficult with different varieties around. Beans are amazing because they can be self-pollinated. You think of squash, they're male and female plants. So sometimes that can be easier if you're able to isolate that, and you can even get involved and pollinate them. So I think part of like a tomato, it has its skin, and I think traditionally would do that and could hold it and just begin to, ferment and sort of start breaking it down.
You cap it? You cap the jar?
You can start to get it going. You actually don't have to, though, get them fermented. I think that sometimes is an easier way to clean them off, and to, if you want to then have them more uniform and not have them be as much as a mess. I mean, a lot of that's what this is all about too, is thinking about economies of scale, whether you just want to have a little jar that you can give to people, or whether back there it's pretty fun. There is on the table, I brought some packets from West River Seeds. I met this woman at our farmer's market up in Londonderry because we were next to each other, and she started a seed company. She comes from a long line of like seed from out west, or people that her family would go through and gather seed and process it for the farms, so they could then grow out their wheats and corn. But anyway, she's on a different scale, so for cleaning it, and then if you're going to pack it up and sell it out, and then get to the actual Johnnies and all of the big ones. So it all depends on do you want to just grow a couple in your garden? Do you want to give them away? Yeah. sort of the level of refinement in your seed.
So Tony's company is called West River Seed Company,
Yes,
and she's growing seeds right here in Vermont.
yes,
Cool.
yes.
Are they commercially available?
You can, it's West River, it's actually in one of the packets. She only has an online store. She doesn't have a catalog, but she does have a display.
What are some other nice seed companies you guys enjoy using?
Fedco Seeds in Maine.
Do you use Baker Creek?
Yeah. I like exploring all different catalogs. Probably everybody
Anyone,
uses
you
that
got
way
any
close.
particular seed companies you all enjoy
No,
using?
people's favorites.
Fedco?
Hi, Helen.
Oh, yeah.
Yep.
Johnny's.
Where can people buy seeds locally? Good high quality seeds.
Williams Store and Meadowy Mint.
Meadowy Mint and H.N. Williams.
Meadowy Mint has Hudson Valley seeds.
Hudson
which
Valley
are Very local seed.
Very nice seeds.
It's an interesting story. We had Maria and I do a lot of farmer training workshops, and there was a woman who tried to grow a large amount of dry beans for 7 years. And it was acres and acres, and she had 15 different varieties. She forgot to ask other people what grew well in this area, and after 7 years, she only had one variety that matured. Well, if she had talked to Jay Lashinsky up in Middlebury, she would have been told that all those other varieties don't mature in time for our wet falls, that only the black turtle bean matures. She forgot to ask people. And it was kind of sad she went out of business. It was a great model to grow lots of different kinds of dry beans, but she needs to have, to talk, like the indigenous program needs to talk to the people who were doing it in the past. And she would have been better off.
Yeah.
And it's interesting actually to take it out just so everyone thinks of it. We all name our favorite seed catalogs. And to be honest, if you have a favorite, say, lettuce variety, take something like Black Seeded Simpson that does well here, and it's not that hard to allow it to go to seed. But the seed from a lot of those common varieties are all grown in one place around the world. It might be a valley in California, it might, and this is even all of a lot of the ones we're talking. It's not the little small ones, but Fedco to Johnny's to all of them. Or one, spot in Israel, or it's global now, so that those varieties, and that's compromising too, that whole resilience factor that Scout was talking about too. It's interesting to think about.
Yeah.
Because they're just like, even from these really fun little catalogs, they're all getting those from the same place. You all might notice one year, I can't get this seed. You've all noticed that. There's none of this. Well, it's all because it's all coming from this one place.
Wow. Any other questions? These guys will be kind of back there hanging out here. Their displays. Happy to answer any questions for you, but I want to thank you all for your interest, your time, and Megan, thank you for kicking off this seed library program, and hopefully, and if you guys have any other topics you'd like to hear for speakers or presentations the rest of the summer, let Paige know for sure. She's always open for ideas.
So for people that want to give to so say somebody has some seeds, is there a way that you would like them delivered to you?
So I created, you'll see there's an example. There's little seed packets that have labels, pre-printed labels, and you would fill in the information. When it was harvested, what it is, and some notes on, like you were saying, and any information you have about how to grow this seed well, write it down. So that will be provided, and then you can just put however many seeds you want to put in the little packet, close it up, it's self-adhesive, pop it in a little basket, and then the librarians will take care of, sorting it. Yeah.
Neat.
Yeah, sure.
Great.
That's awesome.
All right, thank you all very much. Thank you, Paige.